Yo, Scrawny with the Skinny, back with another Fantasy Land, coming at you guys from IEM Katowice. The play-in starts tomorrow. This video is a little bit late, but I still wanted to get it out there. Traveled in yesterday, hung out with the guys, went rock climbing this morning, and have finally pieced together my fantasy team. So this one's, like I said, a little late, but better late than never. And of course, the main event or the group stage or whatever it is coming out soon as well. So play-in, I have confidence in you guys. You'll be fine without me, but here's where we stand, okay? The Blast groups, I ended up coming in with the commitment to Vitality and Navi. I know that in the previous video I was talking like Navi versus Complexity, Alexi versus JT, didn't know where I was going to end. I ultimately thought that Emes price tag and recent results were too good to ignore, and I'm really happy actually that I went all in on Navi with the 2-2-1, taking Kerrigan because so many players had him. Afforded me some other extra money over towards Spinks, who I think performed solid. Not as good as, going in on like Flit would have been or something in like a similar price point. But hey, didn't have the money for Zywoo. Spinks the next big deal. Next best deal. Did well in the boosters, finished top 20%, which nabbed me 12 points. 12 points puts me in 6th place. Bleh has decided to start the season with a hot 1% finish, banking on Zywoo. And I'm not too worried about that. Love you, Bleh, but I expect him to fall off as the season goes on. What makes me a little more nervous is that Prof and Nart, two people finished towards the top of the list last season, 12 points. Voo's got 12 points. He had a season, his first season, I believe, where he was top 10. Nice to see Maniac, P2, and Lucy a few points behind us. It's going to buy us that little bit of a buffer, but let's not forget this is a long season, a real grind with majors in the middle of it, RMRs, etc., etc. So 12 points starting the year, we'll take it. The play-in has opening group stage, or opening best of ones. Best of threes as upper quarterfinals, and best of threes for elimination in lower round 2. This is one of those events where it's like, I remember the Cologne play-in of 2023 where Torzy had one solid best of one, like a decent best of 3, and if you didn't have Torzy, you couldn't even make it top 10%. So there's going to be something weird that happens here, but if I'm not mistaken, since that Cologne, HLTV has changed things so that best of ones only award 50% of points in comparison to best of 3s. So really, I'm looking at these upper quarterfinal games as a chance for teams to really show their value, right? And so let's just go down from top to bottom. I'll talk to you what I think about these groups. I think Cloud9 and Rebels, that's a layup in the same way that Virtus.pro versus Rooster. These are two teams I expect very little from, Rooster and Rebels, unfortunately. Welcome to the big leagues, boys. You're about to get mopped. Eternal Fire and Bet Boom's an interesting match because we've had decent lands from both of these squads in CS2. Or I guess with Eternal Fire, it was last Pro League, so the last event of CSGO. But Eternal Fire finally has Wicadia. Eternal Fire can always get a good game out of Calyx. Of course, you've got Woxic and Xantares as supposedly your more consistent pieces, but Wicadia is like the X factor of Eternal Fire that makes me think they'll probably take that over Bet Boom. I would expect Cloud9 versus Eternal Fire, but this one's pretty 50-50. And let's just say C9 clear their group and qualify. But in comparison to Virtus.pro, I do put a higher risk on the C9 upset. I know VP right now for this fantasy event are a bit overpriced because of their recent blast groups. They're getting pricey. I think Norbert's 209 now. Fame's into the low teens. VP are very much climbing the ranks as the 4th rated or 4th ranked team in the world, and recent results. VP are the team to be picking, I think, especially when you consider that Virtus.pro will smoke Rooster, and then Gamer Legion versus M80 with a recent, roster change and a coach standing in def. I'm going to say Gamer Legion beat M80. If this was the real M80 team, I'm actually going to pick them. I was looking forward to maybe drafting Swisher or drafting Malbs if the price was right, but with the roster movements, I just can't put my money on an inexperienced team like that. So I'm going to say Virtus.pro is the team that you should have 2 players from. In the middle of the pack here, right, I think this second section is the hardest. Heroic versus Astralis, Ents versus Big. Now this is Polish Ents coming through with Glaive, speaking English for the first time. Big obviously started Blast kind of shaky, and not qualifying for the RMR made everybody concerned, but we saw Big slowly get better as the Blast group went on. They were 2-3 rounds away from upsetting Astralis in a best of 3 and qualifying straight to the spring finals in London. So I don't think that, jokes aside, you can really write Big off at the moment. And Heroic, well, they have a chance in a best of one to upset versus Astralis. With a player like Nertz in the server, you never know if his pop-off will just be too much to handle. And Astralis, funnily enough, the kind of polar opposite of Big, were progressively getting worse as blast groups happened. So I'm going to say Astralis beat Heroic still. I think that, you know, the pieces are there. The floor of Astralis is so high. Heroic would have to have a phenomenal day to do it, but they could. Ents versus Big, I'm going to take Big. I think that, you know, a progressively improving start to the year, plus officials already under their belt last week, now coming to Kato. Like, Blast Groups is the perfect warm-up for a team like Big, especially in the face of Ents, who integrating Glaive into this Polish team and doing it as they all speak English for the first time, barring Hades and Diha. You know, I'm not sure what happens here if Ents' floor falls because of it. So I'm going to say Astralis versus Big in the best of 3 upper finals. And I'll still give it to Astralis, but do not forget the possibility that Big upset this one. Genuinely, I think that Big could upset this one. People are, you know, they're under the radar right now because of the whole Major and RMR debacle. And then lastly, of course, we've got Furia versus Mongols. Tough game to call. Furia haven't played officials yet this year. Mongols had some solid land showing at the tail end of 2023, and you never know with Mongols because they kind of just come in with new pieces constantly. I haven't had too much of a chance to watch them, so that game just screams upset potential to me. I don't want to touch this one, really, but what I am intrigued in, obviously, is this is the first time we get the fully fledged official team spirit. Shiro and Donk on the same server, plus Zontix. Now, last week at Blast, we saw great things from Zontix. Dude, Spirit, considering they had a stand-in and a coach, I already rate Spirit very highly. Tail end of 23, the Bet Boom Dacha event, they reverse sweep a best of 5 against Virtus.pro. I mean, I think Donk is very much the real deal, and they've got a walking wounded Apex in front of them. Stiko coming back to competition. You know, we have their leader now gone, playing for Heroic, obviously Kixan. When I look at this team, right, I think Nox got a good op presence. Jacob can take over a best of 1. After that, man, the fall off, I'm sorry, the Tatsunito, Sense, and Stiko trio, I just don't think you can compete with what is the hottest rifler in the world right now, the most hyped squad created in the last 3 months. I'm going to take Spirit, and I'm going to take Furia, and then Spirit win. So we're looking at Cloud9 qualifying, Astralis maybe Big, Spirit pretty clearly, and then Virtus.pro 100% certainty in Virtus.pro. Those are the 4 teams I think you should be putting stock in, and that is why this are the Corn Dogs. This is the team I'm rolling with this event. The play-in, like I said, VP, big on VP. I've been trying to argue that Norbert's the second best rifler after Flit, but I think after Blast Groups, we see that Fame is actually still just cut from a different cloth. I thought Fame started playing a bit more muted, but now I feel like Mir has taken on that responsibility a little bit more so, and Norbert's still a great support player, so Fame, I think in especially games like these, lopsided games, I would anticipate Fame being up there with Flit, front of the pack, taking off heads, and just really getting up in the faces of his opponents. So Fame and Norbert, the 2 VP pick. The double Spirit here, there's a lot of people. The most commonly picked duo right now for the play-in is Donk and Chopper. The Donk hype is very real, and I do think that Donk will significantly outperform Zontix. But the beauty of Zontix is that he exists in the shadow of Donk. And Donk, for somebody who's as small as he is, casts this huge shadow. The hype train's all about Donk, but I don't think Donk has as much success without at least a second very capable rifler. And it's not Magix, it's not Chopper, it's Zontix. We saw even with the wounded Spirit at the Blast Groups, Zontix is legitimate. And I think that if you've been watching as much Spirit as I have, if you've kind of kept your finger on this team, you understand that Zontix at 208k, it's a bit of a steal when there is so many people investing all of this into Donk and the Chopper combo. We get away with it if Chopper has a bad event, if Chopper has some buns best of ones. I think it's like 50% of all drafts include Chopper. And so I feel confident going in with Spirit, especially with their group and the competitive level of the other groups, like I mentioned. But I don't want to put nearly as much money on Spirit by going with Donk, and so I would much prefer to go Fame and Norbert. I feel like Fame and Norbert is a very powerful VP combo that's going to get me points. I think that going in on Spirit with a little less investment opens up a safer bet in case Spirit do take a tumble, either in the best of one versus Apex, which I highly doubt, but maybe more so a closer game versus, say, Furia. A close game there could end up muting Donk, getting him less points, and then emphasizing Virtus.pro is where I'll pull through. And then last but not least, I've got Process. So to me, Process and Big, like I said, have the possibility of getting deep through that 4. Even though they open versus Ents, I think that's a game they win. Even if they have to play Astralis, they'll lose. But Process is at a really good price point, and he's had moments. He's had really good moments. Certain maps in Best of 3 series where he ends with a lower rating, but those certain maps show me that if Big managed to go for a solid run here, at this price of like I think 185, 187, and a high activation on Headshot Machine, I still have faith in Process. You know, I'm always somebody who's rated Big, especially online. If you go back 2 seasons in a row, man, I'm constantly drafting Big in all of the online events. I love Big. The fact that they didn't qualify for the RMR hurt me. I took a jab at Tabson, and I don't want to see Crimbo's career be wasted, but that doesn't mean that I can't recognize an opportunity to just splash a little money here and take Process. I'll go through the draft here. So if you're as sold on the VP double Spirit combo as I am, let's look around at 187. You know, you could go for Fallen, but I don't have tons of faith in Furia. And on top of that, Fallen specifically, even though, let's say, Quesarado can carry, Cello and Art have risen through the floor with their rifling, the op presence is just not being felt right now by Fallen. Apex, I'm sorry, again, if Stiko, Sense, and Satsunito are where they are, Jacob and Nock, it's too much to carry. And again, because I'm going in on Spirit, it wouldn't make much sense to also draft Apex, so they kind of get cut off. Major can be hot and cold. Then we've got the big boys, and between Process and Sin, I'm going Process every day of the week. I think that I see the glimpses of his individual level far more frequently than I do with Sin. Mzino, Mongols, I don't know what to make of them. I'm sorry, I'm not willing to run that risk. Shush and Kixan are also both two teams that two players you could consider. The fact that Shush is 187 feels like a robbery. You know, Shush versus Process most days of the week, I'm taking Shush. Like, it's not even a question, right? The skill ceiling of Shush is so much higher. The potential is so real. But I just think Heroic are still in this weird transitional period, and it's not the Shush of Heroic, the full Danish Cadian lineup, right? If we had the extra money, then I think Nertz at 208 is actually solid. If you really think that Heroic are going to kind of get it going, then I think Nertz at 208 is a steal. And to be honest with you, if you don't think the Spirit pick is a great choice, then where it really sits for me, right, is this 208 that you can free up on either Zontix or Norbert. There's two players at 208 that I think are very tantalizing. One is very much Perfecto. Had an excellent blast groups, and so for 208k, Perfecto to me is like the savior of Cloud9 at the moment. You could try to go electronic, but he's just a bit overpriced. The one thing that scares me with Perfecto is that we keep seeing the op get thrown on him. The same way the op keeps getting thrown on Boomich. And every time the op gets put on either of these two non-op players, we're seeing their performance dip. If they just admitted, let's not play with an op because we're better with rifles, I think this team would actually win more. And I think these players would be more impactful, would be higher rated, and would be better to have in your draft. So that to me is the red flag of Perfecto. And then the other 208 would be our boy, like I said, a Nertz. Nertz at 208, this should be 220 back when he was on Ents, just a phenomenal rifler. And even in Heroic's losses, keeps posting solid maps. But I don't believe in Heroic's ability to necessarily make it to the main event. Again, I think in like the close rounds and the tight-knit games, there's just too many moving pieces still for this team. I think the potential is very real. I like where this Heroic organization ended up with a team, but the time's not now. You know what I'm saying? Gamer Legion, just too mid for me, unfortunately. I think that Snacks is an interesting price, but the results aren't really there. And then also, I think that the Astralis boys bring, a conversation to be had because Stare specifically, 194, I think I regret not having Stare somewhere in this mix. I did think about maybe trying to take Fame out, put in Mir, and then you could either, you could put that cash somewhere else. But I feel like Mir just doesn't get into the action enough, and particularly in stomps, I anticipate Fame and Norbert looking out there, 4 frags, 4 farms, and yeah, that's where I stand. That's what I'm thinking. VP, absolutely 100%. Do not waste time anywhere else. Astralis, there's a lot of faith in them because of their blast groups and the way they started and the way that they almost took down Vitality to get to London. But then don't forget, they also ended that event by nearly losing to Big. So hot and cold, as we've come to expect from the Danes. These are the corn dogs going into the play-in. I'll drop a video soon for the group stage once we see a few more teams qualify. All right? Peace out. Thanks for watching. See you guys soon.